And I cannot, that's why I work, you know, I spend a lot of time. It's quite, it's exhausting. It exhausts my wife partly because my mind is mostly on these things, not entirely. It's also on injustices like Dr. Kelly, the fact that he's never had a proper inquest. Things like that. I'm driven by the I hate injustice, I hate lawlessness, and I love people who enrich life, who are life enhancing, and I detest people who are life denying. And most of our leadership in this, our leaderships in the States, in this country, and Israel, are life denying. You've heard me say this before, haven't you, I think? You know, the symbol most people have, the paradigm in their minds, most decent people, and often more humble people, is of the mother with a baby on her breast. Now this is as foreign to the likes of psychopaths such as Blair. It is foreign to them. They have no idea of it. He's had 4 children, but you wouldn't think so, because he's quite happy to put to death over 1 million humans in Iraq, and to maim perhaps over 2 million. I'm told that in Iraq there are children limping around in most villages, maimed from Mr. Blair and Mr. Bush, and with the support of their Israeli friends, who are equally psychopathic. Well, I told you about the voyage with the vessel called Barbara, Danish vessel. The voyage I called the voyage of the dove, for obvious reasons, rather hackneyed, and the dolphin. It's quite interesting to know why I called it the dolphin, because I've been working with the wife of the trawler skipper. In fact, she had a half share in the boat. And she had for years been trying to tell people about the death of dolphins, the killing of dolphins in bass pair trawlers in the channel approaches. On one trawl alone, they brought up 32 dead dolphins. And they die of asphyxiation in the nets, probably over about 20 minutes. You can imagine the suffering. And I put dolphin in to the title to include the idea of what man was doing to the natural world. So I was speaking about the human world in Gaza, or bringing that to people's attention, and also bringing to attention the way we denied life, the way we in fact mangled quite often the natural world, the non-human world. So that was why. So we set up, that was called the Dove and the Dolphin, and we set up a charity. We had donations before we sailed, which bought the food, the 50 tons of food, milk powder and lovely cheese, things like that. And it was entirely symbolic. It only fed about 2,000 families for about 3 or 4 days. But the charity has rolled on from there. The charity of the Dove and the Dolphin is registered charity commission. It's a small charity. I don't emphasize it too much. Both Susan and myself are not good people for raising money, but people support us. And it is our way of expressing our love for the children, particularly in Gaza, in their great suffering. People have no idea of the suffering of these people. But when I speak of the charity, as I did yesterday, I said the word charity is sickly to me. It's a sickly thing. And it is no answer. The answer is justice. And in Gaza, as I said yesterday as well, I think the BBC Radio Devon person, Emma, that these people are ingenious, they're industrious, but they want to breathe. They can't breathe. They bombed all their factories 18 months ago in the greater Holocaust that was promised about 10 months before by Vilna, the Deputy Defence Minister. So their means of earning a living, they cannot export things. There's no port. They bombed the port they were building in 2000. The French were building with Saudi money. So they can't get things out. They can't get their brains out. They're very clever people. They're very well educated. They've got universities there. and yet they're locked in to this largest internment camp ever in the world, 1.5 million people. So that's the charity. We do our thing. Most recently we have given about $35,000, it's measured in dollars ironically, to the Al Jazeera, not to do with the broadcasting company, Al Jazeera Sports Club, and the most important part of their work is to train disabled athletes, javelin throwing, wheelchair racing, things like that. And they've been out to Japan and Morocco and won medals. Even though they're disabled, they want to show that Palestine exists and that they have the skills to beat other people. And more recently, we've given about $10,000 to the Totnes charity, which emphasizes on keeping the Palestinian culture alive, so crafts like embroidery being encouraged and people being employed. Really, that's the most important thing. Whereas the unemployment rate is over 50%. And about 80% live below the poverty line. All that's totally unnecessary. These people came from a pastoral environment mostly, and they led happy, simple lives in harmony with the natural world and with the land beneath their feet, which was limestone rich and therefore fertile. And now they have mostly concrete and dusty roads because the Zionist ideal demanded it. And they had the weapons. They had Spitfires. They had the best automatic weapons coming from Czechoslovakia before 1948. All worked out very carefully. I could see from the word go the charity had to exist because it seemed a human thing to do. But most of my efforts, to be frank, have been, aside from the charity, have been what some people call political. I don't like the word political, really, but I try and speak the truth about what's going on, and I used to write a lot. I write less now, but I've been on quite a lot of television programs, things like that. But that is, I think, more important for the people there than dishing out $50,000 a year, although it is important as a way of connecting with them and of showing, as I say, our love for them. Now the dignity. You know that, people do not know this, but in February 2008, the Deputy Defence Minister of the so-called Israeli Defence Force, more appropriately called the Israeli Occupation Force, announced that he promised the people of Gaza a greater Shoah. Shoah is Hebrew for Holocaust. Now you must remember, you must think of using that word in the Israeli and Jewish context to speak about the Holocaust for someone else. It was February 2008. There were these Qatar rockets, handmade rockets, being fired by several groups in Gaza, young men, futile weapons largely. They'd killed only about 12 or 13 Israelis since 2002, whereas they've lost hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians. They were being fired, and that was why Vilna was making that threat. In June, a truce was signed between the Israelis and Hamas, and that was mediated by the Egyptians. That was in June, and within the rockets stopped pretty well completely, although there were some renegade units still firing them, that Hamas tried to rein in. In that same June, the Israelis started planning to bombard and invade Gaza. This is entirely typical behavior. At the time when they agree, a hudna, a truce, it's not exactly a truce hudna, it's a stay, a stop. They at the same time start planning another military action. And that started, in fact what happened on the 24th of November 2008, they invaded Gaza. And they abducted some Palestinians and killed, I can't remember now, I think about 6. And but still the Hudna held on the Palestinian side. But about 2 weeks later, there was a further so-called incursion, another euphemism the BBC used, and then the rockets started flying again. I emphasise they are handmade, and they're not guided, and mostly they cause some anxiety, maybe even terror, just as it causes terror to missiles on the Gaza side. And then things started heating up, and on the 27th of December they started bombarding Gaza, as you know. It was wholesale. It was because of 1.5 million people there, and it's very densely populated, one of the most densely populated parts of the world.